Welcome to another English Solutions for Business and Life video. Today, we will be focusing on Unit 10 from the Global Pre-Intermediate book and the vocabulary section. We will look at different places and categories of places, vocabulary that has to do with them, and we will also look at transportation, means of transportation, and some other vocabulary that is important for this topic. We will also look at games, words that have to do with games, and different types of games. So let's begin. Alright, so let's begin. Let's start by looking at places. We have different places in this unit, in this topic, and we looked at places of different sizes. For example, a capital, a city, a continent, a town, a village, state or province, and a country. As you know, a town is a group of houses, a group of people that live together in a community. But it's bigger than a village. Now, a town is smaller than a city. A city will have more than thousands of people, while a village might not reach that many. Now, there is also a capital. The capital city would most of the time be the biggest city in a country. If we're talking about the capital of a specific country, most of the time it's among the biggest cities in that country. Now, let's look at a small graph where we look at the size of each of these places. For example, the biggest word in this vocabulary would be our planet. This is where every human lives. So that would be the biggest. Now, what's smaller than a planet? Well, in our case, planet Earth, it's divided into continents. Each continent will have sometimes a couple of billion people, sometimes less than 1 billion. Then each continent would be divided into countries. There are lots of countries around the world, and each country will have its own culture, sometimes even its own language or many languages. But they each have their own laws. Now, each country could be divided into states or provinces. A state or a province. Sometimes each state will also have its own law, but they will be managed by the country's government. Now, the state could have a capital city. Many states around the world in each country have a capital, which manages what goes on in each state. Now, the capital would be, as I said, among the biggest cities in each city or province. Then come the rest of the cities. Some cities can be really big, some can be quite small. They can be tens of millions of people, they can be less than that. Some really small cities could be called towns. And a town will sometimes have or be managed by the government from the city that they're next to. Then there are villages, which are groups of people, groups of houses that are isolated from the main towns or main cities, and they could be in rural areas most of the time. So that's the vocabulary for places that we looked at in this module, in this unit. Again, we'll repeat the words: planet, continent, country, state or province, capital, city, town, village. Now let's look at the next part of the vocabulary. It was transport, transportation. We looked at a couple of different words that have to do with transportation. We looked at parts of the transportation that have to do with the means of transportation. We looked at the means of transportation themselves, and also some verbs that have to do with the means of transportation. We use a different verb for different types of transportation. Now, let's look at each mean of transportation and have it see which one is related to each of these four words: wheels, tracks, wings, or engine. Some might be repeated. For example, a car can have wheels, and it can have an engine. It cannot work without the engine, so it can go with both. Also, a bus. A bus will have wheels and an engine to work. A motorbike and a bicycle both have wheels, but the bicycle doesn't have an engine. The motorbike, on the other hand, does have a small engine. Probably the rest of these means of transportation have an engine. Trains and the underground will go on tracks. That's how they move. A train and the underground both have wheels, and they go on the rails, the tracks. And lastly, the wings. From the words in this vocabulary, only the plane has wings, as only the plane can fly. Now, what about the verbs? Well, we can drive a car. Driving means that we can control it. Some people can drive a bus. They're the bus drivers. But most people would ride a bus. They would get on the bus also when they ride it. People could also get on the train or off the train. They could drive a bicycle, but the better word would be ride a bicycle. You ride a bicycle. You also ride a motorbike. Now, what happens with get in or get out of? Well, this verb or these verbs are used for big means of transportation, such as planes or sometimes buses. Both are correct. Get on the bus or get in the bus. And you use the underground or you get in the underground. You can also get on the underground, ride the underground, but not many people would drive the underground. So as you can see, these are the verbs that we would use more often to talk about means of transportation and how to use each of these. Now let's look at the next part of the vocabulary, the last part. It's games. In this unit, we looked at a couple of parts or that make up the games and some names of different games. There are turns, dice, board, square, and money. These are common words that have to do with games. Now, we also looked at some names of games: Scrabble, Monopoly, chess, snakes and ladders, Trivial Pursuit, and Sudoku. Now, which of these games take turns? For example, Scrabble takes turns. So does Monopoly, chess, snakes and ladders, and Trivial Pursuit. Because Sudoku is a game that you would play by yourself, it doesn't have any turns. Now, what about games that have dice? You could use dice on Monopoly, and you could also use dice in Snakes and Ladders and Trivial Pursuit. What about a board? In which game would you use a board? Well, you normally use a board for Scrabble, a board for Monopoly. There is the chess board. You would need a board for game Snakes and Ladders and Trivial Pursuit. Now Sudoku, again, wouldn't normally have a board, but rather a book. You would write on the book. Now, what about squares? Well, you could use or you could play with squares in Scrabble. Monopoly, you would jump from one square to another, according to the number that you would get on your dice. The chessboard is also divided in squares. Snakes and Ladders and Trivial Pursuit also have squares, and so does Sudoku. It has squares where you would put the numbers when you're playing. And do you know which of these games uses fake money? Well, really, only Monopoly uses fake money, as Monopoly is a game about making money by buying different squares or properties. But neither does chess, Scrabble, Snakes and Ladders, Trivial Pursuit, or Sudoku use fake money. Those are the words that we looked at during this module, this unit. There were games, means of transportation, and also places of different sizes. And that's it for this vocabulary video. I hope you enjoyed it and you were able to learn more words and to practice the vocabulary that we looked at during this unit. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.